Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Catching Claudia. Today we are interviewing my friend Lann about her life in Japan. We're just gonna get started.
Halfway to Mexico, halfway to Tokyo, on this open road. You've arrived, and I'm singing you the song on the west side.
Okay,
Halfway.
tell me about, huh?
Hi, pal.
Tell me about yourself, or just, yeah, tell me about yourself. Tell me, what are you doing? What are you doing right now in Japan?
I'm living life and I'm studying is basically it, to make it really short. But I'm going to language school right now to brush up on my Japanese because I haven't spoken it in like about 10 years. So I was like, let me move back after I graduate from university because of Corona, and figure out mainly what I want to do with once I learn better Japanese, because I could have the opportunity to like work here if I want to. But other than that, I'm chilling, painting. Yeah.
Ooh, okay, you said painting. So, when did you start doing that?
Middle school, I think, high school.
And aren't you going to like a studio now or something?
Yeah, no, I'm going to a studio in Shibuya. And it's just like I just pay for space and they let me do whatever I want for like a couple hours, and I go like once a week, 3 times a month.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm very excited to see what you produce. So, I guess we'll start with your family's journey to the United States, which, yeah, I've always been curious. How did you end up growing up in Virginia?
Um, okay, to preface for your viewers, we should probably say that we met in middle school.
Oh, yeah, that.
We met in middle school and became friends in high school. Because we were in a middle school musical production of Treasure Island, where I was pirate number 3 and Claudia was like pirate number 2. And it was
Character. That was such
it was
good
a
time.
mess of a play, but it was really like a solid foundation for our friendship.
It was.
Yeah.
I feel like all the people that I became really, really close with were in Treasure Island. It was the worst play, but the best time. It was
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
the worst
Um,
play.
Sorry, yeah, I wanted to put that in.
Oh my gosh, I was so in character. I just remember they had the cork.
The burning of the corks.
And I was like, if I'm gonna play a man, I'm gonna play a man. Okay. I went in. I went in and I had like the big natural hair ponytail still. So it was just a look. Good times, really. But yes, that is how we met. We met in middle school. So yes, how did your family end up being in Virginia and eventually we met? But yes.
My dad's work. So he was in Germany before he came to Virginia, and then I think about like 30 years ago, because they came before my sister was born, and my sister's 29 now. So 30 years ago they came to Virginia. That's a really long time ago. I used to be like, oh yeah, like 10 years ago, but like now it's like an actual chunk of time. That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, no, 30 years ago they came to America. My sister was born and then I was born, and then we just stayed in America until now, I guess.
That's wild. So when you were growing up, how often did you visit Japan?
um so I guess like this is like the interesting part that's like different from like other Asian American stories, and my Asian American story is that like a lot of Asian Americans, like their parents or they immigrate from their home country to America for like a better life, or like to be able to like provide better for the family or like whatnot. But my dad really strictly only came for work, and so like he had a habit of like going back to Japan whenever he could, and ended up taking us along with him to see family and stuff. So that ended up being like at least once a year, pretty much once a year. And then the older I got, the more frequently we went. So I think starting from like middle school, I started going for New Year's and summer, because New Year's is like a big celebration, and for like Asian countries, and our family just wanted to like get closer. So
That's cool. And you are technically a dual citizen then, right?
yeah,
Technically. But
technically.
yeah.
The governments don't know that. But.
Right. Well, but okay, so then since you went so often, I think what I find the most interesting about you moving back to Japan is, or moving to Japan, is that your family is from there, but you never really lived there, you only visited. So
Yeah.
you experienced a culture shock since you've moved to Japan officially for the first time.
No one freaking jaywalks here, and it really annoys me.
Really?
Like there will be like a stoplight, you know, like the walking men stoplight that like tell pedestrians when to go. Like there'll be one in like the most ridiculous spot where it's like an alleyway, and people will still stop if it says red light. And I'm like, there are no cars. It's like so narrow that like cars can't even like pass through that alley, but there's still a stoplight for some reason. There's this one singular stop like alleyway that I'm thinking about right now that just like bothers me because I have to pass it all the time, and no one freaking jaywalks.
Is it a more pedestrian friendly place, or
like there's like this whole culture of like respecting people and respecting things. So like in a way, yes, I think, but in that way, it also means that people like will follow the rules to the most like unnecessary point, like an alleyway where there's no cars that can pass, and people will still stop when it says red light. So yeah, that's something that I noticed recently, and it like really bugged me, just because like I'm from Richmond, I'm from friggin' Williamsburg, like, you know, like
oh, you are? I'm sorry.
I mean, okay, well, I was gonna say that like I went to VCU, so like yeah, like
Yeah.
Richmond. But like people do jaywalk, so like, you know, I was just like, okay. But other than that, well, I've been on like dating apps and stuff like previously since I've been in Japan, but I've never like seriously went on any dates. And then like maybe like 2 months being in Japan this past year, I went to the movies with this guy that asked me to the movies, and I mean, yeah. And then like a month later, I was with my friend at her birthday, and she was like, so why didn't you tell me you went on a date with this guy? And I was like, what date are you talking about? And she was like, with this guy, like, you know, enter name. And I was like, oh, that was a date? And I guess
Oh my God.
in Japan, there's like I mean, maybe in America, there's the same culture difference that I just like haven't noticed. But when two people are hanging out together and they don't really know each other, other people will automatically assume it's a date. What do you think?
I feel like no.
I thought he was just trying to be friendly,
Yeah,
and like
I was
he
like, I
wanted
would
to
see
like
that
be
as
my friend.
like, oh, like let's get to know each other. When we put it like that, maybe that's a date. I don't know.
I don't know, but in my head, I wasn't thinking of it as like a date. So like we went to go get coffee after the movie, and we were just like talking for a couple hours. And at one point, my friend brought up this fact that she was like, yeah, he was talking to me about it, and he was like, at one point I wanted to like ask her and get to know her more about like herself and like her family, so I started asking questions, and she started talking about racial indifferences in America, like living in America as Asian American. And
Man.
the thing is that I very specifically remember when he asked that question, and I was like, he's getting too personal. And so I like remember pulling that out of my bag and like started talking about that. And what my friend told him was like, she's really private, so that's probably why she started talking about that. And I was just like, at least she knows me. Like,
Oh my God.
um,
Well, speaking of that, because of the pandemic and there's been like a lot of APPI hate in the US, um, how has it been living in Japan for the pandemic versus living in the United States?
um, honestly, I like living in Japan more than I do in America. Pretty obviously, right off the bat, I look very Asian. So like, especially when the pandemic first started and when it was like first ramping up, I dealt with a lot of microaggressions and honestly like straight up racism. Like I had a girl spray me with Lysol everywhere I walked around in a store, and I was on spring break. And so after that, I noticed she was doing that. I went straight back to my hotel and like cried for 3 hours. Like I think that was like the first time that like I felt like very outwardly like pointed out as Asian. Like besides the times that like by like someone that I didn't know, you know, like
Yeah.
I'd been bullied before, like by classmates who like called me chink and stuff in the hallways, and like, you know, like people who would make fun of me and like ask me if I needed chopsticks instead of a fork, like, you know, like those types of stuff. But those came from people that I knew. Like this was like very specifically like someone that I didn't know, you know. And like there, like after the pandemic started, like there were a lot of like instances where like people would throw out jokes or call me names or like, you know, just like be very outwardly aggressive towards the fact that I'm Asian, despite the fact that I like grew up living in America and I was like born in America. But living in Japan, like obviously here, as one of the most homogenous countries in the world, like everyone looks like me. Not only that, but like going back to the thing about the culture of respecting others and respecting things, and like being rule followers, everyone wears a mask here. Like even indoors, like you're even outdoors. Like we'll all like right now we're like hitting our peak with Omicron, like the first variant of Omicron right now. And if I were still taking classes like in person, because right now I'm online, I like people are wearing masks and we're crushed up against each other like a pack of sardines in the train, and we all go to work or to school, but everyone's wearing a mask and people don't talk on the trains. That's why there isn't as much of a transmission of the variant like on the train, which is nice. So like people still trust each other to be so close up together, but it's because we're all following the rules. So
That's really interesting.
yeah.
I think you brought up, well, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
You brought up a good point because I think something when I was living abroad in Spain that I found very interesting is kind of the volume and how people interact in public spaces. So they were saying, the Spaniards were telling me that Americans and Spaniards get along because we're both very loud and talkative in public spaces. So the fact that you mentioned, whereas like in other countries, you know, people are more quiet or just not as loud. I remember when we went to Italy after me living in Spain for, I think at this point, 5 months, we felt so awkward talking on the bus or the train because it was so quiet. We were just like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah, no, if you talk on the trains like in Japan, people will like stare at you or like look at you. Or like me and my friends were on the elevator once, and it was like a small elevator, so like, and it was a group of 4 of us. So like, And then there was one old lady like who like snuck in before the doors closed, and like we were all kind of like packed. This was like a couple months ago. And we were talking, but like we weren't talking that loudly. Like we were just like continuing our conversation. And the lady was literally like, we're in a quiet space. And we were just like, she didn't even look at us. She just like belted it out looking forward because she was closest to the door. And we all just like looked at each other and just like shut up. But like that's like a thing. Like
That's
in
very
public spaces, like
interesting.
you don't really talk. I don't know.
Huh, that's very interesting. I would have, that would be a transition for me definitely. 'Cause I feel like I am on the phone a lot on a train or something just to pass the time.
It's
But,
convenient. Yeah.
yeah, so that's really, that's very different, and I would definitely consider that a kind of cultural difference. Have you noticed anything, and again, I don't know if it's different for you because you've gone back so many times, but have you
Mhm.
noticed any other major cultural differences since you visited or have since you've moved?
Um, the fruit quality is better. I'm like obsessed with fruits. I just I'm not obsessed, but I just really like fruits. Because it's sweet like candy, but it's not super sweet. I don't know. It's like naturally sweet. I don't know.
I love
Um,
fruits and vegetables. Don't get me started.
but it just like it makes me really happy that like no matter what fruit I pick at the supermarket, I know it will taste good. But on the other hand, they're more expensive because in like take for example like the way they make strawberries in Japan versus how they make them in America. Like over the summer you go to the strawberry fields and you see like the strawberry patches and they're just like spanning like the entire field in like rows and rows and rows, right?
Mhm.
And when you go pick the strawberries, like sometimes a lot of the times you'll see smushed strawberries or strawberries with like bugs all over them or like they're kind of gross. um and like if you pick like a basket full of really good strawberries, like that's like a good haul, right?
Right.
In Japan, they have like these hot tents. Also, strawberry season is not just the summer. We're in like peak strawberry season right now. So,
Wow, jealous.
but strawberries are like they have like the mounds of special soil that they're grown in, and they're grown in like these mounds, I'm pretty sure, and then they grow up, and then they have them so then they droop, but they droop perfectly. You'll have to look up a video of this later.
Yeah.
But they would do it perfectly, and then they have something to catch the strawberries, so then they don't fall to the ground. And
Wow.
then they're grown in these huge tents that are like humidified like throughout the year, so it's hot and moist. And I don't know if you don't like that word. Sorry, you can bleep it out if you want. Um, but like it's so interesting the way the quality of fruit is different from the very beginning, like from how they're grown. And so that's why, but that's also why strawberries can be so expensive in Japan.
That makes sense. That sounds really cool though. Very that's definitely a difference because um I would say our fruit quality, it's interesting. I don't know. The US, it's just interesting cuz I that was a big for me that was a huge thing as well when I was in Spain. I was like the fruits and vegetables are so good.
Good, yeah. No, they
Yeah,
definitely. I just feel like quantity is valued over quality in America because there's so many more people. I mean, maybe not so many more people, but it feels like there's so many more people that you have to feed, right?
right. Yeah, that makes
And like, granted, America is 26 times larger than Japan is, but in terms of population, I think there's like 14 million people in Tokyo right now.
goodness.
So like the density, and I'm not good at math. I shouldn't even start to explain this.
Stop.
I'm just gonna stop myself right here before I embarrass myself.
Triggered, please.
I saw the fear in your eyes, and I was like, I should back away from this.
Like math, man. That is if I ever have kids, that is my fear. The day they come home with math homework.
The amount of times I have listened to Claudia cry over math, it's a lot.
Yes, it just wasn't clicking. It wasn't clicking. Um, okay, so you kind of mentioned with the fruit. Do you have other favorite things or least favorite things in Japan?
Um, I love, but I don't love the fact that people are rule followers here.
That makes
Because
sense.
on one hand, I can go to a cafe and I can grab a table, drop my stuff off, like my laptop, my phone, my AirPods, stuff like that, and then go buy my stuff and then come back and still know that my stuff is going to be there. Like that's really nice. But at the same time, I feel like, and this is like a very American perspective because I grew up in America, that there's like almost like some bit of self-expression that's muted because everyone's like forced to like follow the rules, and that's something that I don't love. um Something that I've noticed with like people my age and like the younger generation, which is really nice, is like they're starting to like break out of that, and I see like honestly it's not that big, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but coming from someone that's like living in Japan right now, it blows my mind. It doesn't, when I see kids with dyed hair, I'm like, damn, like you go, keep doing that. And I think like
Wow.
part of it is that I grew up in like a very traditional family. So like when I was blonde, I made sure to dye my hair back before I went to Japan
Mm,
because I knew that my family wouldn't like the fact that my hair is blonde, or they wouldn't like the fact that my hair is pink or blue or green or any of the colors that I had it when I was younger. Um
sense.
and like so and because I only came to Japan growing up and spending time with my family, I didn't get that much exposure to the rest of Japanese like society and culture. So for me, when I see kids like branching out and dressing themselves in the way that they want to, or like I see kids like with dyed hair, or like older people my age who are like um business like career people, sorry, the Japanese word was coming up in my head but not the American English word. um but I see like those older generation kids and they have like dyed hair, or they're like self-expressing through fashion more. It makes me like happy because it's just not something that I'm like used to seeing.
That's really interesting. Speaking of the Japanese word coming up, do you feel like your Japanese has gotten better just in your small amount of time that you've been there so far?
Definitely. Like um there's so much learning that you can do just from input and output. And for me, like now that I'm hearing and listening to Japanese like 24/7, I'm remembering words that I'd forgotten. I'm remembering how to read kanji that I like couldn't have read like 4 months ago, just like stuff like that. But also like the fact that I have more opportunities to speak Japanese, because I went from speaking Japanese in my house up until I was 11, and then from 11 onwards I wasn't speaking any Japanese at all. It was only English, right? Unless I was going back to Japan. So like the fact that I can like practice outputting a language is increasing my knowledge by so much. And also like I'm going to school for Japanese, but I'm going specifically, it's different because I'm going specifically for business language, because there's a difference in how you speak in like Japanese and Korean. You use honorifics. There's like an honorific system. So there's a way that you speak to your elders, there's a way that you speak in the business setting, and then there's like casual speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm learning like the business setting of Japanese, and it's honestly it's really hard. There's so many like specific vocabularies that I had, like I showed my textbook to my dad the other day, who is a businessman, and he's like, I don't even know half these words.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
was just like, I'm gonna be smarter than you.
That's really interesting. So Did you learn the more casual version then originally, or no? Do you know more of the casual version?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I don't know how to talk to people my age because I only spoke in honorifics at home.
Oh, okay.
But going back to how I said my family's really traditional, we're really traditional in that like my dad's family, like they spoke in honorifics to like each other. But I recently learned, and it was really embarrassing for me in class, that you don't speak in honorifics to your in groups.
Huh.
So I found that out 23 years late.
I
And I'm like, oh, I still call my father father.
What are you supposed to call him? Like
I,
dad?
I guess. But
Huh.
like I feel like I've I don't know, I like now recently I've been calling my dad.
Oh,
And like I like catch myself like being more casual, but growing up it was always oto-sama, which is like father.
hmm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you're learning in reverse, basically.
Yeah.
You're having to pick up on a lot of the things that you missed.
I
But
definitely am. So that's why like I've been I've been recently like before Corona was really bad like it is right now. Um I went through this phase of going on dates with people, not because I was interested in dating people, but because I wanted to practice talking to people my age.
that's
So
normal.
me having zero interest in like dating any of the people that I was going on dates with, like none of these guys. Um and like a lot of times like on these apps like they'll come and ask you like mokuteki wa nan desu ka, which is like what's your like goal for being on this app, like that's like a thing that they ask, like are you
Wow.
here for one thing or are you here for another thing, like like they want to know, so like it's like a very clear communication
Like
style.
setting the
um
expectation.
but like for me I'm just like I'm here to learn. Like that's what I'm here to do.
Oh my gosh. No, that's what they say. That's what they were telling me to do when I was in Spain. They're like, just get a Spanish boyfriend so you can practice.
But like it's really about learning the culture and getting into the
Yeah.
slang and like really understanding what and how people our age are thinking, for you to be able to create the output that you want in like a very colloquial setting.
That
Like
makes
I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I only have two more questions. So do you ever plan on moving back to the United States?
um on one hand yes, because like in terms of working and like the industry that I want to get into, um it would make more sense, I think, for me to move back to the States. But on the other hand, we got universal healthcare.
Oh, wow.
Like there's a lot of things about America that I don't necessarily love, or like there are things that I know will be more difficult as a person of color and as a woman, like trying to live
Yeah,
in the States. So I think, and I also like, and maybe I won't stay in Japan. Like, I definitely want to explore Europe a little bit in my lifetime. And like, so I don't know. I'm honestly just like going with the flow and just like trying to figure out what I want to do, or like where I want to start, because I know what I want to do. And go from there.
that I could definitely see you moving to Europe or um yeah, that could be a move for you for sure. And if anything, you could just come back or like be multinational. I was like, I don't know what it's called, but
Transnational.
sure, yes. It's it is 8 in the morning for me right now.
It
Uh,
is 10:30 for me.
that's wild. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to interview with me.
Sure.
Do you have any final thoughts about your experience so far, or anything you want to share? Or and then plug your social media if you want.
Um, Explore and like if you want to come to Japan, come to Japan once the borders open up, of course.
Like,
Um,
say less.
open
Don't say that
invite.
to me because I'll be there next week.
Not open invite to the entire world, but open invite to you, of course.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, and thanks for having me. I had a really good time talking to you. And I guess my social media, on all accounts except for LinkedIn, it's Mother Gyoza, which is my favorite type of dumpling.
Those are very delicious.
It's really good. Yeah. So, oh, and follow me on Spotify. I like making playlists.
Okay, I'll definitely put the link in the description. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Halfway to Mexico.